Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Spirit Chats with Kat. Just a couple of things I want to talk about before we get into the podcast. I listened to the last podcast episode, and of course, there is typically background noise when I'm doing the recording, simply because in order to have things perfectly quiet, I probably would have to sit in a closet or something like that. And no, thank you. I'd rather just have you all come into my home with me and get to be a part of everything that happens when I start to record our podcast. So anyway, last episode, listening to it, I could hear a lot of crunching in the background, and I realized that our Great Dane decided that would be a good time to have her lunch. So that's what was going on. I guess me recording makes the animals hungry and thirsty in my world. And today you might hear her bark a little bit. Hopefully not. Hopefully she'll be quiet enough, or I'll catch it in quickly enough that I can pause the recording so that you don't have to listen to her bark, because she is very loud. So anyway, hopefully that won't happen. Also, I wanted to welcome a new app to our podcast family. We are now over on Apple Podcasts as well. So now you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, SoundCloud, Podchaser, Amazon Music, and YouTube. So hopefully one of those will be convenient for you to listen to as you're going about your day or winding down or whenever it is that you listen. I also wanted to say thank you all so much for being interested. When I first thought about doing this podcast, I really thought maybe one person would listen. I don't know why I thought that. I think it's just because, I'm just a regular Joe or Jill, or however you want to look at me, out here randomly doing this podcast about things that have happened in my life. I don't have any kind of a following anywhere. I'm not a TikToker. I'm not anything that is really hip and cool, and even my vernacular probably is pretty ancient, such as myself is getting to be. I'm just kidding. I'm not that old, but I'm old enough to know better. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you to those of you out there that listen and that are interested. I really did just want to get the word out to, even if it was one person out there that was going through the things that I had experienced and having to go through it alone. And I didn't feel like anyone should have to go through that alone. No one should have to go through that alone and try to figure out what's happening on their own. And it's it can be isolating as well, especially if you grow up in a pragmatic household or a religious household. They may not be open to acknowledging what's going on with you, what's happening, the things that are happening and that you're trying to share with them. And so, as you all know, if you listen to my introduction and you listen to any of the podcast episodes, you most likely picked up on the fact that, going through that alone, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and I just kind of wanted to take that feeling of isolation away Even if I could only do it for one person, that was important to me, to be able to just help someone that was going through what I had been through. So I've gotten more response than just one person. So all of you that are interested, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it, and just to, be given that an hour of your time out of your day, that's just amazing. And I just appreciate that so much, and I hope that whatever I say and, whatever comes up in these podcasts, I hope that it's beneficial to you, because my goal is to make the world a better place, in a sense. And I think we could all use some of that right now. So, anyway, now on to this episode of Spirit Chats with Kat. I think I mentioned at the end of last episode that we were heading back to the sunshine after being up in Montana for 5 years. And it's not that it wasn't amazingly beautiful. It was amazingly beautiful up there. The people are just, the salt of the earth people. And just the best people. And very tough, and really know how to get along and think outside the box and things like that when things are difficult. So I admire them greatly. It's just that as I said before, I'm an outdoors person. I'm all about being outside, and being stuck in the house for that many months out of the year, that was just difficult for me. I mean, I could have bundled up and, gone out, but sometimes it was 30 below. And I don't know. I don't know how much fun I would have in that atmosphere. I'm not built for that, maybe. Maybe I'm just not tough enough for that type of atmosphere. So we headed back down to the sunshine. We went the opposite direction, and actually, that's where we had come from. So we lived in Arizona before we moved up to Montana. And, we headed back down to Arizona to thaw out for a little while before we moved on to the next place. So now, also in the last episode, I talked to you about pay no attention to the timeline, because we're switching less from chronological order to location. As I said, we lived in Arizona, and then we moved to Montana, and then we moved back to Arizona. So the first time that we lived in Arizona, I had things happen, and of course up in Montana, I had things happen, as you know. And then when we went back to Arizona, the activity picked up for me. I wondered for a while if, how you've heard them on some of the shows, they'll say things like, so-and-so is haunted. It's not the location, it's the person. I never got the feeling that I was haunted, and again, I guess that's just the way I approach it mentally. Because for me, being haunted, that term just kind of sounds like I'm being harassed. And I don't feel like I'm being harassed, and I know that some people do feel that way, and I totally get that. I can completely understand how you would feel harassed, or some people would say targeted. I can totally understand how you would feel that way, because when you're experiencing things around every corner, it can feel like harassment. Like, oh, come on, man, can I just get a minute to myself, please, without somebody popping up? So I can completely sympathize with you if you feel that way. There's nothing wrong with feeling that way. And just hopefully by listening to me, once you start developing your own positive, healthy coping mechanisms for it, then it might become easier and it might feel less like a harassment or less like a targeting once you understand what's, a little more about what's happening and the things behind the scenes. I feel like, so in the My Genesis episode, I shared my death with you. And while that's typically something that I keep very private and I don't share with the world, and so, even close friends, I kept that very private for a very long time because it took some time to work through that, and you don't always want to go back down that road mentally. You don't want to have to think about certain things that you've worked through and moved past. But I felt like it was so important to share that with you all so that you could have an idea of what is kind of going on behind the scenes all the time around us. And that it's not so black and white as a lot of us have been taught. There are a lot of gray areas, and even gray areas that I'm not necessarily comfortable with. So if you're not comfortable with this, I totally get that too. I am right there with you. There are some aspects of this, that I'm just like, I'm not so sure that's what I believe, And again, that's where you and I and we all will get the full picture once it's our time to go. We'll get the full picture, especially if we go ahead and move on to the next place. I think that staying here limits our view of what happens, but of course, even if we stay here, we know a whole lot more about what's going on than we do when we're alive and we're here. Because I don't know if it's still true because you younger generations, I feel like, are so much more intelligent than I am. So, but they used to tell us as kids that you use 10% of your brain, that you're only using 10% of your brain. So if you think about that, 90% of our brain, what the heck is it doing? It's not atrophying, so something's happening with it. And by atrophy, it's not deteriorating. Like brain tissue, here comes my nurse brain. I apologize. Brain tissue, when it's been injured, will atrophy. So it'll start breaking down and deteriorating because, like any other body system, if it's not exercised, it will start to shrink, and those parts that aren't getting used just get smaller and smaller and smaller. So the fact that that doesn't happen to us until we get significantly older makes me feel like there's something going on in there, which, this conversation with you all, although it's one-sided, one-sided in the sense that I'm the only one talking at this point. I really keep on top of neuroscience. That's my wheelhouse. And I'm constantly educating myself on that. And I use that in my work every day. So I'm constantly educating myself on new developments and things like that they're finding in relation to the brain and our nerves. And it really is just fascinating, incredibly fascinating to me, anyway, the things that they're learning. And it's most likely just that I haven't come across an article in my research yet that we actually do use more of our brain than just 10%. Like I say, I'm pretty sure you younger generations are using more than that. So, anyway, that's why I decided to share my death with you. I felt like it was incredibly important for you to see what is happening behind the scenes and for you to understand, to give you some background on why I say our ancestors are still there for us. They don't just disappear, they come and go. And if you listen to all my podcasts, I run into them off and on. They will show up and peek in on me and make sure I'm doing okay, or help me if I ask them for help, or whatever it is. They're not a money tree, though. I have to tell you that. And I didn't learn that from my own experience, but an experience, I knew that. I would never ask for financial gain because I don't feel like that is where my true happiness comes from. I had someone close to me that asked for financial gain from the ancestors, and it turned out in a way that he was not expecting. But that's all I'm going to say about that at this point. My plan is, in this series, to have him on an episode with me and let him tell you about his experiences in his own words, because I don't want to put words in his mouth. It's important to me that this is as accurate as it can be, relating personal experiences. So anyway, yes, at least from what I've experienced and what this other person has experienced, your ancestors are not a money tree in the sense that you can't say, hey guys, can you tell me what the winning lotto numbers are, please? So anyway, let's go on to the location. So leaving Montana, we went back down to Arizona, to a city in southern Arizona. And I had come from there, and the desert in that area was my birthplace. So I'd been back and forth from this place frequently. Okay, let's not say frequently. I don't want to exaggerate. I would say 3 times in the course of my lifetime. So we're going to go to a time when I was 24 years old and I was a newlywed. My husband at the time and I had just moved in together, and he came to me one day and asked me where the nail clippers were. And I told him they're in the medicine cabinet. And he said, I just looked in there, they're not in there. And I said, well, the last time that I was in there, I saw them there. He's like, they're not in there. He was getting upset with me because, I've totally been where he was at that moment. He thought I was pulling a prank on him. And I wasn't. I was totally innocent. So I insisted that that's where they were the last time I saw them. I got up and I went and looked myself, and sure enough, they were not there. So, he left and went to work, and, naturally he was upset with me because he thought I was pulling a fast one on him. And we were newlyweds, and we had dated, we had only known each other for 6 months before we said I do. So, we and moved in together and everything. So we were still getting to know each other. And at that point in time, I don't even think I knew who I was accurately. I was still young enough that I knew who other people had told me I was. But as far as most aspects of my personality, I hadn't really dug in there to discover myself, if that makes sense. It probably does to anyone that has been that age and past it. That probably makes sense to you all. So, he went to work, came home, still disgruntled, and we went to bed and got up in the morning, and he went into the medicine cabinet, and the nail clippers were there. And they were right there where I had seen them the last time I had been in there, and right there where he had put them. And, up to this point, although I had had interactions with other spirits, I'm thinking back, and this is the only time that I can remember being completely aware that a spirit had moved something. So this is why I say I know that they can move objects. And I was very uncomfortable with that because I felt like, as a newlywed, this activity created havoc in my relationship with my new husband, and it portrayed me in a light that was not flattering. And so I was bitter about that, honestly. To be totally honest with you, I was bitter about that for quite a while. Until I began to understand, that for the most part, my interactions with spirits have been spirits unrelated to me. I have had frequent interactions with spirits related to me, but most of the interactions have been unrelated spirits. So I was still trying to get a handle on everything that was happening, which, as we know, and as I've let you all in on, I still to this day don't completely know, because every time I think I have things halfway figured out, I get a curveball from somewhere that gets me thinking again. So anyway, I couldn't understand why one of my ancestors would do something like that. And you see the paranoia that I developed over time. And I don't know if it's because of I know it's not solely because of having spirit activity. It's because of that, and because of having no one to talk to that could make sense of it for me, that I became paranoid, and just kind of felt like I was living in a world of chaos at any given moment. Chaos would pop up. And as I told you, you guys, I like order, I'm learning to wing it, that too. But I do appreciate order in things. So I'm very type A that way, and learning to be less that way. So, for a while, I just didn't want to have anything to do with my ancestors or anyone else because I felt like that was just mean. Now I completely understand that had nothing to do with me. That was simply about there being a spirit there with us who felt like they needed nail clippers for whatever reason. I don't know what they were going to do with them, but they felt like they needed them. So they borrowed them, and when they were done, they put them back. I don't feel like it was malicious at all. No spirit trying to get at me and cause issues. And maybe that just comes with maturity, that understanding, that just comes with age. So, and maybe I've mellowed out in, because, I am of Irish and Scottish descent. Not full-blooded, of course. I don't claim that at all. I'm a little bit jealous of the people that are, but I do have them in my bloodline, and I identify, I think, most with my Irish ancestry. And, but, that got my back up. And I didn't want to have anything to do with them for a while because I was bitter and mad about it. So anyway, that was my first experience with a spirit moving an object. When my son was young, I made the choice to have income from something that would allow me to take him with me, or that would give me the flexibility of being able to care for him, schedule my work around my child, because my son still to this day is very important to me. His well-being is very important to me. Not so much that I hover. Hopefully he feels like that as well, that I'm not a hovering mother. And I'm pretty sure he's comfortable enough with me that he would tell me flat out if he felt like I was. So I began cleaning houses for a living when my son was a baby, in order to have an income that was my own and also be able to care for him, and to give us the flexibility to go places and do things when we wanted to do them, because we were big on camping and things like that. Camping, fishing, whatever we could do that got us out of the house, that's what we would do. So there was a period of time where I was working in a particular home, and I was loading the dishwasher and cleaning the sink one day. And over my shoulder, in my ear, I heard my name, Amy, just like that. And I pulled away and turned to look at the same time, as if when someone invades your personal space and you don't know they're there and they say something in your ear, then you automatically, it's a knee-jerk response for a lot of us, I think, to pull away and look. It'd be like, oh, let me create my personal space here. So I looked, and of course no one was there. I was in the home by myself. And of course that was unnerving, because when you're in a stranger's home and you're working, you don't expect to hear a male voice say your name right in your ear at the sink. I mean, if someone had been actually standing there, then you all know this from listening to my podcast as well, I would have gone into immediate fight mode. Because we know I am not flight, I am fight. So nobody was there. And I thought, okay, this is just way too weird because, this isn't even my own home. And I left and I started investigating the home, thinking that maybe somebody had come in. I didn't hear them come in and they're hiding somewhere in a closet or something like that. And you know how in horror movies people go toward the action? Maybe it's my fight mentality, but that's me. If you listen to my podcast, you pick up on that too. I'm always going toward it. Maybe that's one of the reasons I became a nurse. I'm not afraid to, jump in there and get my hands dirty, so to speak. I go toward the action instead of away from it. So I looked. I scoured the whole entire house. The doors were locked. I always kept the doors locked when I was there by myself. If I didn't feel comfortable and my husband at the time wasn't working that day, he might come with me to help me and keep an eye on Tony and stuff while I did my work and to make sure that I was safe. And he hadn't come with me that day because I felt okay in this home. I knew these people were strangers to me, but I didn't get that gut feeling that there was anything to worry about. So I felt like if it was an issue, it came from outside the home. So again, I checked the entire place. The doors were still locked as I always kept them. And to this day, even in my own home now, if I'm here by myself, I lock the door. It's just what I do. You never can tell. Maybe I watch too much A&E or something. I don't know. But you can never be too safe. So that again, walking around, looking for whatever individual that was, I felt that heavy feeling behind me. Like someone was following me. And I just felt so uncomfortable, but I didn't leave because I had been sent there to do a job and, my word is important to me, so I wanted to be sure and finish the task that I had gone there to do, regardless. Once I knew that there was no physical individual in the home, regardless of whatever else was happening, I was going to complete this because I had said I would. So the whole rest of the time I was there, vacuuming and everything, I just felt that heavy, heavy feeling on my back. So the next time that I went, I asked my husband at the time to come with me, my bodyguard to come with me. So just because I didn't want to go through the whole time at that location, having that feeling and being, not being able to focus on what I was there to do. So again, this time I was standing in the kitchen cleaning, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw an individual leaning against the wall with his arms crossed and his leaning on, he had one shoulder on the wall and one foot on the ground and the other one just kind of resting there on top of the foot that was on the ground. And he had on overalls and a buffalo check flannel shirt, red and black, and he had reddish hair and reddish blonde hair and a reddish blonde beard, and he was a bigger guy. Tall and just, a bigger guy, a huskier guy. And I saw him out of the corner of my eye, and he was standing there smiling, watching me. And I turned my head real quick, and he's gone. Disappeared that fast. And I shook it off because I knew I had my bodyguard there, and he knew what he was there to do. He wasn't going to let me be disturbed by a human being unless it was the homeowner coming in, So, and I know that sounds off the wall, right? But when you deal with circumstances like this so often, and you see them so clearly as if that is an individual standing in front of you, the line between this world and that world, you're constantly trying to discern where is the separation. So you're always trying to figure out if what you're looking at is a human being or if what you're looking at is a spirit, because they look as clear as a flesh and bone person standing right in front of you or standing over to the side of you, as this gentleman was. And, so that's part of where my paranoia came from too, the constantly trying to figure out, is this flesh and bone? Is this spirit? And again, if you listen, what am I looking at? What am I looking at? So in order to feel comfortable in a space, sometimes I just need somebody that I feel will protect me, like a flesh and bone person that will protect me from flesh and bone so that I can deal with spirits, if that makes sense. And I'm not trying to deal with flesh and bone and spirits at the same time. That's just too much. I'm not that good of a multitasker, and everybody is just way too complicated for me to have to deal with everybody at one time. So, it just makes me feel more comfortable sometimes to have my husband at the time, or my husband now, or my son, or whoever it might be with me in a space, just to, give me that little bit of, hey, I got your back if flesh and bone bothers you. So, this gentleman, I didn't feel like he was threatening at all. He seemed like such a nice, sweet person. I just got that vibe from him. And again, my gut tells me things, and I try to listen to it. I really try to listen hard to it. Once I started tuning out all the voices from people trying to tell me what to think and how to feel, then I could really focus on my gut and start using my gut to discern how my approach should be with individuals, because you guys, especially young people, you'll want to use every tool that you can, okay? So and by tool, I don't mean Ouija boards. That's one of those things that I give a thumbs down to. Maybe it's because I'm one of those people that doesn't need one to communicate with the spirits, but I feel like, I don't know if they make the spirits angry or what it is, but the interactions from those are not usually positive. So I really don't recommend them at all. I recommend that you start noticing what's happening around you and stop listening to the voices of other people that have told you spirits don't exist and things like that, and start thinking for yourself, and then develop connections. Like I said, research the history of the place that you're in, research your ancestral history, Start building that connection with your ancestors so that you don't miss when they come to see you and things like that. These things are super important, and I really suggest that you do that. Use these tools. Ancestry.com, it's not 100% accurate, but if your parents and your grandparents have accurate information, it's a great place to start. And, there's that. Your grandparents are a wealth of information typically. They want to share their lives with us. Especially as they get older, they want to share their lives with us. So if you have access to a grandparent, or oh my goodness, if you are one of the lucky ones and you have access to your great-grandparent, go for it. Go visit with them, build that bond, let them talk to you about their mom and dad, their husband or their wife, and their parents, and on and on and on. Your great aunts and great uncles and all that. Start building that connection with where you came from. It's so important. And it's not just important from a healthcare standpoint to know if you're going to develop, diseases and things like that later in life. It's super important for you to bring them in around you so that you don't have to go through this life thinking that you cannot have a relationship with people that are not here in flesh and bone, but they're still waiting for that connection from you. They love you. You are a part of them. They gave some of their DNA so that you could be walking around on this planet, and they love you to pieces, and they want what's best for you. So build that connection, use them, ask them for protection when you need it. Listen to your gut, tune out what everybody else is telling you, all those voices in your head that don't belong to you. Get rid of those, get quiet, listen to your own voice, and start using your gut. Okay? Is this person, this lumberjack looking gentleman that was leaning against the wall, is he a threat to me? No, he's not. He's not. He just had a very calm, peaceful, laid-back vibe about him, and he was smiling at me in a really sweet way. So I really didn't feel like he was a threat. I didn't know for sure if he was the one that followed me around that day. Again, they get so excited and they get so up in your personal space, and they don't understand that they're affecting you that way. So, he probably was just following me around like, hey, where's she going next? What's she going to do next? Hey, what's this person here for? I don't think I've met her before. He's just excited. There's somebody in the home, and I think that spirits can sense that I can sense them, and that brings them in even closer to me, and they start doing things to, check it out. Like, I think she can sense me. What can I do? Let me poke her on top of the head, and, let me put my hand on her shoulder, or whatever it is. And they do all these things to me, and I'll go into those more detail into those things later on in other episodes, but just trying to figure out, do I notice that they're there? And they're so excited about it, because they feel that I can recognize they're there, and they've been ignored. And I don't mean to offend anyone by saying they've been ignored. We've been taught to ignore them, right? We've been taught to do that. I mean, because when a child comes to you and they say, hey, mommy, or like I did to my grandmother, there were people at the foot of my bed, or there was a lady in your strawberry patch, or whatever it is, or somebody was playing the piano. They come to you, the little ones, and they tell you these things. Or somebody keeps touching my toe when I'm in bed at night, or, there's a man in my closet or something like that. And we say, oh, no, that's just this. You're just seeing the shadow of this or that. That's just the cat. That's just, your sister. That's just whatever. What are we doing? We're teaching our little ones from a young age to ignore what's going on. Now, do I think that we should terrify them? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think that we should educate them gently. Put it in a perspective for a little one that is more non-threatening. And, you can even ask these spirits, if you listen to your gut and your gut is telling you it's okay, and it's not anything to be afraid of, you can ask them to protect your child. Watch over your child. There's nothing wrong with that. I've done that, and it works marvelously, I must say. So this gentleman, because I still felt uncomfortable in the house, and he was such a sweet person, I saw him. That wasn't the only time I saw him. I would see him off and on when I was in the kitchen. It was always when I was in the kitchen cleaning. I started asking him to protect me. Just go with me and watch my back, okay, friend? And I always felt like he did protect me. I always felt like he was just a sweet energy. And the minute I asked him for protection, he was on it. And this man, I believe, was not a connection to me. I believe he was a connection to the homeowner. And he was just so sweet. He was like, yeah, all right, I got this. I got you. Don't worry. I'm going to watch over you while you're here. And that's what I felt coming from him after I asked him to protect me. I felt like he was my friend. And I do feel like that with the majority of spirits that approach me. I really do. They're, like I said, they're typically sweet and protective, while their initial approach can be frightening, unnerving, disconcerting. It's just because I'm naive and I'm never expecting it, even though it's happened a million times to me. Number two, and that's a gross exaggeration. I'm sure you all know that because I probably used a different number on another podcast about how many times it's happened to me. But, it's happened to me so frequently, I should know by now. But I'm never ready for it. I am never ready for it. And, I think that's part of why it's so unnerving to me. Because legitimately, you just look over and there's a person there. Or, the red man. Or a dark form. Or a young boy. Or, whatever. In whatever way that they choose to approach me. An animal. Whichever way they choose to approach me. It's just so different. A shadow person, brilliantly colored lights. It's different almost every single time. And different scenarios every single time because they are all unique entities, just like we are all unique. So I'm just never expecting it, and it's always a shocker. I mean, seriously, it's always a shocker every time. So, to bring these people in close to me and ask them to watch over me for whatever period of time I'm in their space, if I feel the need, I won't hesitate to do that. And they are so sweet in their response. So sweet. The ones that my gut tells me this is not a good energy or this is a different situation, I would never dream of doing that. Just I don't invite that in. I don't invite the negative energies in, only the positive ones. And remember that, young people, too. Even though it may be tempting to invite negative energies in because we do tend to get picked on and things like that because our experiences are so different from everyone else, don't be tempted to bring in those negative spirits to protect yourself with. Bring in the positive ones. Connect with your ancestors. I can't say that enough. I cannot say that enough, young people. Connect with your ancestors. Know where you come from. Build that bond with them. Get that protection. Don't leave that protection off the table. Bring it in. Use it. That's positive energy. You will feel the love. I promise you. And it won't take you down a path that you don't want to go. That your heart was never meant to go in. So now, we are going to go to, still in Arizona, but go to the time after we left Montana. I'm in my mid to late 30s, and we're headed back down to Arizona to thaw out for a few years. So we lived in an apartment complex in that city. We lived in, it was a suburb at that point in time. When we first moved back, it was a suburb, but it quickly became part of the city itself because that's how fast this area was growing. And there was, as I said, we always tried to do things outside when we could. And it was a tradition for my son and my husband at the time to go dove and quail hunting on opening day, which was Labor Day, and at Thanksgiving as well. So it was Labor Day, and the guys got up early and made their sandwiches, got themselves together, packed up their guns, and headed out with the other guys in the family to go hunting for dove and quail. Always had the option to go be with the other females, but, I enjoy being by myself just as much as I enjoy being with other people, if not more so. I don't know why that is. I really hope that doesn't offend anyone by sharing that I'm an introvert. It's not you all, it's me. It's me. I'm an introvert. That's all it is. So please don't take that wrong. I sincerely don't mean that wrong at all. I own it. I'm an introvert, and I'm okay with that. And I hope you are too. So I stayed at home, and I had kind of, after getting my son ready to go and everything, I was kind of missing him a little bit. So I went in and laid down in his bed, just so I could feel close to him. And I fell asleep in his bed, and then all of a sudden I was immediately awake. And the layout of this apartment was, you came in our entry, and off to the left you had the living room area, and living room and kitchen. It was like a wide open area, and the kitchen was at one end, and the living room / dining room took up the rest of the space on that side. There was a little hallway that went down to the right, and straight at the end of that hallway was my son's door and his bedroom, and around the corner in the hall was a bathroom, and then there was another little hall that went, it was a T, I should say. So the hall from the entryway dead-ended at the T that had our son's bedroom, the bathroom, and then on the opposite end of the T was the master bedroom. So I'm laying in my son's bed and I'm instantly awake. And anytime that happens to me, I lay there for a second trying to figure out why. Because as I said in a previous podcast as well, when I go to sleep, then there's a lot of times spirits are trying to communicate with me. So I'm always waking up wondering if that's what's going on, why I woke up out of a deep sleep. And I just lay there listening to see if someone's talking to me. Nothing. I don't hear any sounds. Our dog, the best dog ever, he wasn't barking. And then I notice, looking down the hallway, you could see from my son's open door, you look straight down the hall and you could see the living room area, the majority of it you could see. There was just a little part of the wall which the couch sat up against. The end of the couch was against the end of that little wall. So you could see like the legs of the couch, the front part of the couch where your legs would go if you were sitting on it, but you couldn't see the seat and the back. And I look out into the living room and I see a dark spot on the living room ceiling that wasn't there before. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, oh no, we have a leak. Upstairs is leaking. Wouldn't you know it? The guys are gone. The apartment upstairs is leaking. I'm going to have to go up there and tell them they're leaking down. This is the conversation that's going on in my head when I'm laying there looking at this dark spot on the ceiling. As I'm watching the dark spot, it starts to grow and it turns fuzzy and it looks like it's a big drip down onto the floor below it in our apartment. And then the drip, the puddle, I guess, I don't know what else to call it, but the spot it ends up on our apartment floor goes upward and turns into the shape of a person. And no, again, this was another shadow person. And no features, no nothing except the dark, shadowy shape. And it was a crisp outline of a person. I have yet to see a shadow person that is like a blur. Every single one that I've seen has been a clear, crisp outline of a person. And just dark. But this time with this, I could kind of see movement in the darkness. So, like an undulating movement. Bubbles, if you will. Not exactly that, but that's the only way I can think to describe it. And I'm laying there freaking out mentally, as you can expect. And this person takes 3 or 4 steps over to the couch, turns around, and sits on the couch. And once they hit the couch, they just disappeared completely. And I could no longer see them. And the only way I knew that they sat on the couch was the motion that they made when they walked over there. They walked to the couch, turn around, and go into a sitting position like you're falling back onto the couch. And then they just disappeared. And I was really freaking out because I'd never seen anything like that. And this is in broad daylight. This was not at night. This was in broad daylight that I saw this. And, this was a time when I did not run in there to see, hey, where did the shadow person go? My dog was there with me. He didn't bark or anything like that. And I just said to myself, okay, since he doesn't think it's a threat, he didn't notice that this was going on, this must not be a threatening presence. Because as I said before, he would have noticed if it was a threatening presence and gone ballistic, and he didn't. So I just said, okay, all right then. That's what's happening in this place, and I'm just going to deal with that's what's happening in this place and go on with my day. And that's exactly what I did. Now, not too long after that incident, we adopted another dog. And this is the dog that you'll hear, that I told you about, that likes to harass the cats and drink a ton of water when I'm trying to record my podcast, if I'm over at his house or if I'm pet sitting him. My grand dog. This is him. This is this sweet little dog. And he is a sweetie, and he also is very protective of me. But if it's between me and my son, then he will protect my son all day long, and I'm on my own. So, which I don't blame him. That's excellent. That's a great dog. So anyway, we adopted this little guy. And at this time, he was 8 months old. And we brought him home. And, I wasn't his favorite person because the house that he had been with previously, the female in that home wasn't nice to him because he chewed up some of her expensive shoes and things like that. And for me, if you get a puppy, you go into it knowing your stuff is going to get chewed up. And you could come home at any time and something of yours is going to be chewed up. It was very frustrating that he only chewed up my things and he didn't chew up the guy's things. But I wasn't there when they adopted him. It was my son and my husband at the time. And they're the ones that, in his mind, rescued him and brought him home. So their stuff was off limits, but mine was fair game, apparently. So that little rascal frustrated me no end when he was a puppy. So anyway, I had gone back to bed this evening, this particular evening. I had gone back to bed and laid down, and the guys were out in the living room watching TV. And I had been back in the bedroom for a little while, and I felt like I was hearing footsteps. And every now and again I'd pop my head up, and I wouldn't see anyone, but I just had that feeling that something was going on around me that I could not see, but it was happening. I could just feel it was happening. And next thing I know, here comes this little 8-month-old German Shepherd Heeler mix, click, clack, click, clack, click, clack, into the room and sits by the bed. And he just sits right next to my side of the bed. And I look down at him and I'm like, oh, that's really weird. He doesn't even like me, I don't think. So what's going on here? Is he waiting until I go to sleep so he can, chew up something of mine? What's happening? So I just was like, oh, I'm too tired to do anything about it right now. I can't freak out about this. I'm exhausted. So I'm just going to try to go to sleep with him sitting there right next to me. So next thing you know, I hear footsteps coming down the hall. And with the footsteps, I hear heavy breathing. Like, I'll do it for you, but I'm not trying to weird anyone out. I realize this probably sounds like an obscene phone call, so just bear with me. I want you to know what this sounded like. It sounded like a male going, and he came into the room. You could hear the footsteps and the heavy breathing approaching closer and closer, and you could hear him come into the room. And the heavy breathing stopped right above me. And the next thing I knew, that sweet little puppy jumped up on the bed in between me and whoever this was, because there was no one there. I saw no one. I didn't even see a shadow person. All I did was hear them clearly. He jumped up between me and this spirit individual, and began barking and growling like he was just gonna fight tooth and nail for me. And the spirit slowly but surely turned around and left the room. And again, I look for clues in the animals. So this sweet little puppy that I thought did not like me because he just wanted to chew up my favorite tank top and things like that, my beach towel, all of those things when I wasn't at home and I'd forgotten to put him in his kennel, my stuff was like a magnet for this little guy. But he wasn't going to let anything else hurt me. So he ran the spirit off. And, while I was totally creeped out by the whole heavy breathing spirit coming and hanging right over the top of me, on the other hand, I was like, yeah, I don't think he hates me. So it was kind of like I was, as usual, full of emotions for, a person that is not typically emotional. I feel a lot of them all at once sometimes, and this was one of those times. And so I was so grateful to this sweet puppy. And I felt like whatever he chewed of mine next, cool. We were good. Everything was even Steven at that point. Because he apparently saved my bacon from whatever was going to happen. So one day in this same place, I was sitting out in the living room, just hanging out, and the guys weren't there. I don't know what they were doing at this point, out doing guy things, I'm sure. And I was just hanging out at home, taking advantage of some time to myself. And I heard from the bathroom in the master bedroom, I heard my husband at the time call me. And it clearly was his voice. And again, just like I did in the last podcast, if you got a chance to listen to that one, jumped up and went in there because, one of my people was calling for me. So I went back there, no questions asked. Like, hey, yeah, what's up? you know? And I got back there and I remembered they were not here. So someone was calling my name in a voice that sounded just like my husband's at the time. So, that always unnerves me. True, always unnerves me. If somebody calls my name and it sounds like it's someone that I know is not there, it just unnerves me. And I don't know if that's just the way that my auditory system is deciphering it, and maybe it sounds similar but it's not their voice. I really don't know. I don't have an answer for that. That's one of the pieces of the puzzle that I don't have an answer for. So now I want to talk to you about something that, again, it makes me feel uncomfortable, but I want to share it with you in case it's something that you are dealing with as well. In this same place, I had a what typically might be called a dream, but in this instance, my gut tells me it was a vision. Was it a vision of events that were going to occur to me or to someone else? That I'm fuzzy on. I don't know. But I, in my sleep, had this intense vision that I was wearing scrubs, and I was coming out the back door of this building that was red brick. And it had a railing, some kind of metal railing. It was the top of the steps where you exited the building was like a rectangle shape. And then there were two smaller steps that came down off of that. So 3 steps down and you're on the ground. And the ground was paved. And it looked like a complex of buildings around me. So I just walked down and I had the feeling that I had just finished a shift. And I'm standing there kind of, digging in my pockets and probably, if I know me, making sure I have my pen and things like that. Because if you don't leave your assignment with your pen, you will never see that pen again. And you may really love that pen. So I most likely was looking to make sure I had my pen on me. I don't know. But I heard, as I was looking down and I'm going through my pockets, I heard a loud pop. And then all of a sudden, I'm laying on the ground and I'm struggling to breathe. And I can feel how hard it's getting. It's getting harder and harder and harder for me to breathe. And as I'm laying on the ground, struggling, and I feel a warm wetness spreading from my chest, I hear footsteps running away from me. And I try to look and see who's running away because I wanted them to help me, get me help. And I couldn't see them. I was too late. I was too late. And I didn't know why they were running away instead of running to get me help. At that moment, in that moment, I did not realize what had happened. And I laid there and I'm looking up at the sky, and there's beautiful white clouds floating in the sky. And I noticed that I'm getting more and more relaxed, but my breathing is getting slower and slower and slower until it stops. And then my vision goes dark. And as soon as that happens, in real time, I sit up and I'm gasping, gasping for breath. And I'm crying, and I'm shaking my husband at the time, and he's, startled. What's wrong? What's wrong? And I trauma dump on him and tell him everything that just happened. And to this day, I don't know. Is that a vision of my future? Is it a vision of what happened to someone else? Or is it a vision of someone else's future? I don't know. But that's how my visions are as well. They're not helpful. They are not. They are not helpful. Except now I am very conscious if I'm in an area like that or a situation like that. I am very conscious of my surroundings. My husband now tells me I have cop brain because I'm always, more like a detective. I'm always trying to figure out who should I keep my eyes on, who's my gut telling me is an issue, watching everybody's body language and all that stuff. Because of that, because I want to be aware of my surroundings. And that was just very disconcerting. And I really, 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 really hope that doesn't happen to anyone else, that you all haven't had to deal with that. And if you have had to deal with that, I'm right there with you. I am right there with you, friend. And I'm sorry that you've had to deal with something like that. Those visions that can be so scary. So scary because you don't know what you're seeing. You know what you're seeing, but you don't know who it applies to. So, but bear in mind, if you do have something like that, if you do have a vision like that, don't stop living your life. Because living your life is so important. Don't live your life thinking about what you can get. Live your life thinking about what you can give. And if you can give from inside your home these days, you sure can. You can donate money online. You can volunteer online, I'm sure, now these days too. But, people need that interaction. People like you need to know that you exist. So don't stop living your life because you're terrified of what may happen one day. Because even if that does happen, that is just a short little drop in the bucket. And everybody that you love is waiting for you to introduce you to what happens next. And it's going to be a great place. A great place. So don't not live your life because you've had a vision like that and now you're afraid to live it because you don't want to die. That's not the point, is it? It should help you appreciate every day even more, which it actually does that for me too. I really do appreciate every day that I'm given because if that does apply to me, I don't know when that's going to happen. So I just want to appreciate the here and now. And maybe you can do that too. We can try together. How about that? We can try together. So anyway, that is the things that happened to me in Arizona the last time that I was there. And, it's kind of a good segue because it was after that, actually, that I did become a nurse. So the next few episodes are going to take place during the time from that point and since I've been a nurse. There are things that I have to be aware of. There is information that I can't share. I have to be very, very careful, as any nurses and healthcare, people and anyone in the medical field should know, and attorneys are fully aware of. There are HIPAA laws that I cannot violate. So, the next few episodes, if they seem more vague than usual to you, and if I'm not sharing as many details as you would like, please just understand that it was an honor to take care of these individuals, and it's an honor to, protect their HIPAA rights as well. So there are things that I cannot share. However, I will be sharing my own experiences in certain situations. And, because they just haven't stopped, and actually they've just increased more and more and more. And I don't know if that's because I'm open to it, and I sometimes, I know it's not location because it happens almost everywhere I go unless I'm distracted. If I'm distracted, I'm not going to see things, but more often than not, it happens everywhere I live. It has happened. So, all right, you guys, as I said before, thank you so much for the interest. I mean, I really appreciate you spending just a little time listening to the things that have happened to me, during your day or your week or whatever it is. I appreciate you so much, and hopefully this will help you or someone that you know, because that is ultimately my goal, is to help other people out there and be like a little community. Be a community for people that are going through these things, I guess you could say. So anyway, catch next week's episode, because as I said, we're going to start talking about some things that occurred since I have become a nurse. Thank you all so much.